21st century technology has led to a shift in the education paradigm.
From radical new techniques in classroom teaching to lessons being digested, education methods today are so different from that of the past.
One example is an interactive electronic software that helps students to take a more proactive approach when it comes to learning science.
Recently, AMLive had a chat with Eric Lam, the creator of the amBook, and Dr. Mark Salata, an education consultant.
And we found out how they're using non-conventional methods to help students to learn better.
amBook is an interactive textbook. We wrote it because we wanted the information in a typical textbook to just pop up, to just jump up and excite the student. Because we realized that a lot of kids these days, they're learning, for example, science. They're not actually seeing the relevance of what they're learning. And so because of that, they kind of feel quite burdened when they have to prepare for tests and exams and so on. And we thought that that is such a waste of their time and energy, and we wanted to create something that would really bring out the relevance of science.
Like you say, relevance is the main thing, but how do you keep children engaged in the actual learning process?
The interesting thing that we realize is relevance doesn't really mean real life. If something can be very real life and very irrelevant to a student. Take, for example, if we are looking at the digestive system of the human being. Some teachers will walk into class and they would start the lesson by telling students, well, today we will teach you why do people get gastric ulcer, gastric cancer, for example, or gastric pain. Now, these are all very real life examples. But then they're not really relevant to a student who is aged like 12 or 13, isn't it? I mean, what is the chance of a kid getting gastric cancer? I mean, there are, but they're not a lot. So when we looked at introducing this topic, we wanted to approach it from a more discrepant point of view. So we introduced the concept of flatulence. And what we did was that we show students...
That's what this diagram's all about.
That's correct. we start off with this little cartoon animation of this little boy going to a library trying to pick up a book, and then the man right next to him releases gas. And he faints at the stench of it.
So in essence, it's all about making that connection with the students with, you know, big concepts and making it fun in a way. But, you know, that this whole idea of making it fun and being relevant has been around for a long time. Maybe, Mark, you can shed light why it's so important today for kids today. Is it the way they absorb information and learn?
Well, actually, today's students aren't very different from students in the past. What is different is the context in which they live, right? Generations ago, to conceive that you can travel halfway around the world in one day, is a dream, not a reality. To be able to take something out of your pocket and call somebody around the world, or send even an SMS, it was not fathomable. So now students have all these increased abilities to communicate with one another very quickly in a social manner. And the other thing that has evolved, if you will, is the science education research, what we understand how students learn. Students learn best by being engaged with something that either inspires them to want to know more. It is, as Eric was saying, a discrepant event, which means something happens that is unexpected. So it immediately starts the mind to start questioning, why did that happen? How did that happen? And you use the word fun. The way that say, amBook or other things should be properly designed is to actually engage them, but not just fun for the immediate moment, but to have a joy for learning. And to actually want them to learn more and to proceed further into the topic.
We think of learning as being sort of a transfer of knowledge, but is there some kind of something lacking in this notion, and is this something that technology can help to resolve?
Absolutely. Yeah, in years past, we've conceived of students as being empty vessels, right? And we have content that we pour into them, and therefore they're full. That is shown in the research not to be good for long-term learning. In fact, it kills the internal motivation. Human beings have an innate motivation to want to learn about new things. And so if we conceive of the student as someone who has something to contribute, and also someone who can actually begin questioning and work with others to collaborate, then we have something that's very special and actually is aligned better with how humans learn. And I think today we finally have gotten to the point that we realize technology can harness that as well.
Right. So if I look at it this way, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, in the past, education, when we teach children, it was a top-down approach, but now you're doing it the other way around, bottom-up, where they have to take the initiative to actually want to be inspired to learn something, right?
That's right.
I mean, but what's to stop them to walk away?
Well, that is actually a big assumption, that they would walk away from something like that if it is engaging enough, if it is relevant enough to the student, and if the student is well supported by the parent, for example, at home, or the teacher, where a parent or teacher no longer behaves as a teacher per se, they behave as a facilitator of learning, being interested in what the child is learning. The chances of them actually walking away from something like that, from our research and our studies in schools, is actually very, very minimal. So yes, the possibility exists, but the chance is actually pretty low for that.
I can understand how amBook would come in handy when it comes to science concepts, because you can actually like what you did here, sort of animated and stuff. But what about other subjects? I mean, are you planning to bring other subjects such as, I don't know, literature into the picture? How is that possible?
Well, it's actually pretty interesting that you asked a question of my favorite subject. Literature is my first love, actually, because I find literature really real, because it is one of the most psychologically centric subjects. You learn to analyze the character of an individual based on what he says and what he does. So if we're looking at the same principles, where we could just introduce discrepant events of what that guy is actually doing based on what he said, getting students to ask questions. Now, students today actually don't ask enough questions. They believe in just listening and just internalizing and absorbing it. Whether they actually understood or not is a big question mark. If you can create and provide that kind of platform to kids, where they will start asking, discussing, debating, and finally agreeing on something, then I think that is very possible. Now, we're looking exactly into these subjects as well: literature, mathematics, a bit of geography, earth sciences, and so on.
The way children are learning nowadays, and how it was different in the past, and in a world that's all wired up these days, perhaps children that might not have access to this type of technology in the future, will they be left behind?
Well, that's a very good question, and we have to be well aware of how we're pushing the envelope with technology. And if we take steps to make sure that the, say, software that we're developing is not only functional on the brand new hardware that you have, and make sure that it works across all these different types of hardware, then we have a better chance of making sure that it's more equitable. But that is definitely one thing. In some countries, in fact, they have declared it a human right to have internet connection. And so we have these changes that people know that they have to push that and make it sure it's equitable. It's a very good question.
You know, many have been saying that the future of the classroom is all about technology now, and you hear about online learning, distance learning, and that they're outdoing actual physical classrooms. But what problems could potentially arise from this that you see?
Well, the framing of that, the evidence of it actually outdoing the classroom is mixed. There's clear indications that technology, when it's used improperly, could do just as much harm as a teacher by themselves in a regular brick-and-mortar classroom. If you want to go to the scenario where we go completely to using computer, internet, no teacher, no traditional setup, then you could imagine social skills not being developed, social emotional skills. So, how do we interpret each other's body language? How do we interpret each other's words? Those are key to success. Daniel Goleman wrote a whole book on emotional intelligence. And those who have high EQ, emotional quotient, compared to IQ, actually succeed in life better in all indicators. So you need the human touch.
All right, and that was Dr. Mark Salata, an education consultant, and Eric Lam, who developed a software to encourage more proactive learning in students.